Okay. Kumlen and Ablat Gemara, we are Daf Yud Amud Aleph at the very beginning, the top of the page. So we're talking about that a person claims, a chassan claims that his wife was not the psula that he thought, and because he didn't find any blood, or we were talking, reached the last page, we're talking about Pesach Pesuach Matzasi, there was no haim in there. So he's believed as far as he himself, and we limited that only to cases where there was one doubt. In other words, when did he believe as far as himself that he has to be machmer? In that is, was if it was the wife of a kohen, so there's only one suffix, whether it was done prior they were engaged or after they got engaged, because their engagement period was so long, thief can't happen. So there's only one suffix, and because he says it's usher, or if she got engaged before she was 3 years old and now she's over 12. But they finally got married, they consummated their marriage. But in the case of an ordinary wife, an Eishes Yisrael, it's a Sfek Sveika. We don't know when it happened, before or after, even after maybe she was coerced. So it's a Sfek Sveika, even though he says, I didn't find any dam, they're not usher to each other, because it's a Sfek Sveika as to what happened. What exactly she says in this situation is an argument, whether she, are we talking about whether she denies it or she just quiet? What happens if she says, you're 100% right, but it's not what you think happened, and says, definitely I was coerced, something to that effect. Then there are many poskim who say that because she is a bari, she is definite, and he is just a maybe, he doesn't know what really happened, and she's definitely telling us, yes, you're right, there's no blood, but I was raped. So then we do believe her. Others don't necessarily agree. Another argument between Rashi and Tosfos is, when we believe him and he can no longer live with her, does she then lose her ksuvah? Rashi says definitely not, and Tosfos says yes, like Shmuel says right here. Shmuel said that if he said Pesach B'Suach, she loses the ksuvah. And the question will be why? Why do we believe him as far as the ksuvah is concerned, that she should lose the ksuvah? We don't really believe him. We just say, well, you think it's us, fine, don't live together. Why should she lose the ksuvah? So we're going to learn right now. Top of the page. Itma, we learned. Amram Nachman, name of Shmuel. Nachman said name of Shmuel. Mishum Rab Shimon ben Elazar, name of Shimon ben Elazar. Chachamim tiknu lahem libnois Yisrael. The Chachamim instituted the following. Libsula, for a girl, is Masayim. The Ksuvah says 200. And looking out in your Ksuvah, you'll see it says there you're entitled to 200 zuz, okay, 200 mana. And we'll soon see how we know that. And almana, if she's a widow, then only mana, 100. The heim heminu, and the rabbi decided to believe Sheim Amar. If he says Pesach Pesuach Matzasi, Ne'eman, he's believed. So it sounds like from here, the reason why he's believed it, because the whole institution of Ksuvah is from the rabbis, and since the same rabbis say we believe him, therefore she forfeits Ksuvah. And the Gemara continues. If so, the whole purpose of the Ksuvah was to give her stability in the marriage. She knows that he won't just throw her out because it costs him money. But if he's believed to say that you're usher to me, and then she leaves and she forfeits the Ksuvah, so what exactly did we do here? How do we protect her? Omar Rava says, Rava, chazaka. There is a chazaka here. The chazaka means there's a logic here that gives us reason to believe this man, and that is, the person is not going to work so hard for a meal, and then the next morning he's going to say, I don't want to live with you anymore. It's not just the fact that in those days the chassan paid for it, but it's a lot of effort. We learned before, 3 full days we want you to spend on it. So if he already knew prior to getting married to her, they had no interest in her, why did he go ahead with the whole procedure, the whole process of marriage and everything else, and the following morning go to court and say, I didn't find any dam, and then send her away. Don't get married in the first place. Yeah. And according to most, you don't give a ksuvah when you're only engaged. So he could have gotten out of it. The fact that he went through the whole bother means he genuinely wants to live with her, but he came up with a genuine story that she's us, and that's why we believe him. So this chazaka is what gives us ground to believe. So and without this chazaka, we wouldn't, even though he has a thing called a cheskas mammon. There's a rule in halacha that says whoever has the money is 9/10 of the laws that it's yours. And if somebody wants to extract it from you, they're called hamoitzim mechaveira alvaraya. The onus is on them to bring conclusive proof. For example, probability is not good enough. If he says, the Raiv cases tell me so and so, it's not good enough. Raiv is not strong enough when it comes to cheskas mammon. Over here, without this chazaka, we would believe the woman that she is innocent, and that is because not only does she have a roiv that most girls are psulas, so therefore the roiv backs her up, but she also has a chazaka that she's permitted to her husband. And she also has a cheskas group that probably, she was a psula all the years until the very last moment. So she has a number of chazakas and roiv that support her. And that against cheskas moment is strong enough. But now that he has two chazakas, he has the fact that the money is by him. Chazaka number one. Chazaka number two, he has that a person is not going to spend all this effort and time to make a wedding if he's not interested in living with her. Those two chazakas then counter her three chazakas, two chazakas plus a roiv. Says the Gemara, Tana, we learned, we're 6 lines on top of the page of Yom Aleph. Tana, we learned, since it's a penalty, the whole idea of it is a penalty, like tigme element as a burius. What does that mean? We're going to learn Baba Kama in the first parak that, there's a person generally there's 3 categories of fields. There's idios, the superior ones, there's bain, there's average, there's the burius, which are generally fields that are not very, they're not very useful. And it depends what kind of loan it is. We say that you have a right, the one who's owed the money has a right to claim either, like, for example, if a person was damaged, he can collect from idios, from the best of the fields. A Baal Chayv collects from bainis, from the average fields. But a ksuva is from Zaburius, from the bottom, from the versus field. And why is from Zaburius? Because we say that, women generally have to get married as long as they have some security, it's good enough. So they get from Zaburius. So Murari asks, Knossa, my Knossa, how can you call ksuva a knas? El Ema say, Hoyil v'takonas chachami. I don't mean knas, I mean takona le'sibiyam zaburi. Only give the zaburius. So it says clearly that the whole idea of ksuva is only midorabanan. And why did the Gemara start out with a knas? Because there are two possible scenarios that somebody gets a ksuva. One is a divorce, and one is the husband predeceases her. And if the husband predeceases her, in the case of divorce, we want to make sure that the reason why there's a ksuva is we don't want him to be angry, upset with her, and then just throw her out. So it's like a penalty. But the Gemara says you also have the other scenario, which is the husband died before the wife, which she's fully entitled to her alimony, to her ksuva. And why do you call that a knas? So the Gemara says, initially the Gemara was mainly focusing on a divorce. So the Gemara says, you're right, we'll call it overall takana. If you look in your ksuva, it says over there, masan kesef, the chezi lechi midaraisa, that is suitable to you from the Torah. And yet the first opinion, which is the Rabbanan, they hold it's midarabanan. So many Rishonim who say that if you have in your ksuva the word midaraisa, the ksuva is puzzle. But we all do have the word midaraisa in our ksuva. Why is that? We'll see in a minute. Saying one further, Rav Shimon says ksuva is isha min haTorah. He believes that ksuva is min haTorah. And because he believes in the Torah, there are many Rishonim who rule, like traces right here, who rule like Rav Shimon ben Gamliel, that Ksuva is Mahatorah, and therefore the Ksuva says that. Even though in Halacha most poskim hold it's not Mahatorah, the idea of a Ksuva, but because others say that maybe when we say Mahatorah means not that the Ksuva itself is Mahatorah, but now that you're committed to it, the Chiyuv becomes Mahatorah, because every person that gets married accepts that they're going to obligate themselves to pay this out. It becomes Mahatorah. And that's what it means by Mahatorah. Or because it's based on the Torah, the amount that we give, as we'll see in a minute, so maybe that's what it is. And what is that? First, before we get to that, Rav Shimon will actually say that it's Mahatorah. But Tanya, we learned, it says in the Pasuk, a girl
if it's presumed that he's going to give it out, why does he need a guarantor?
Sorry?
If it's presumed that he's going to pay it out,
it's not at all. What happens if he has no money?
Then he's not going to sign it, is he?
Yes. So therefore, we say, I'm not talking about guarantor. What guarantors? What are you asking?
When you sign the Kesubah,
there's Adim. There's no guarantors. They're just witnesses that you signed it.
There's also a guarantor. I was a guarantor for somebody.
That was for Tsunoyim. That was to go ahead with the wedding. And that's if the parents don't want to pay for the wedding in the last minute, you have to pay for the whole wedding. Did you know what you were signing?
Obviously not. I thought it was a guarantee for the Kesubah.
Not at all. That was a claim. On the Kesubah, it's merely Adim, witnesses. And all the assets of the person is indebted to the Kesubah. Not metalton except according to Rameir. Okay, so Gemara says, did Rav Shimon going to say that? But Tanya, we learned, so if a person seduces a young girl, a naira, he has to then, if he doesn't want to marry her, he has to pay her out. And how much does he have to pay her out? He has to pay her out. The Torah says, Kimoyer Hapsulis. that just like the amount you pay to a psula, which is the other case, somebody rapes a girl, he has to pay a certain amount, and there it says you have to pay 50 silver pieces. 50, pay 50. So you pay 50 shkolim. So therefore, we pay 50 by a foot, 50 shkolim. The 50 shkolim became 200 dinner. There's a big argument what the 200 dinner you pay, whether it's sort of depends how much silver. In those days, coins had real silver to it. Coins actually didn't just represent something; they had intrinsic weight and intrinsic value. And there's an argument, whether you had those coins that only had an eighth of it was silver, or the entire coin was silver. And obviously, one is called Kesef Tzuri and one is called Kesef Medina. Kesef Tzuri was the one that was totally silver, and Kesef Medina, only an eighth of it was silver. So obviously, it only is an eighth of the value. And the question is, which one are we referring to? A big machlek is Rishonim. Moshe talks a lot about it. How much is a ksuva really worth today? So anyway, it says a pasuk. Kesef, it says Kesef Yishkal. You should give by Mafuta, it says Kesef Yishkal. So we know that it's Shkolim. It doesn't say amount, it says Kesef Yishkal. All the Torah says is how much, the same amount that we give by an Oinus. Kemoyer Hapsulis. Sheyehei Zeh Kemoyer Hapsulis. That the amount you give here should be like Moyer Hapsulis, where over there it says $50, and here it says Shkolim. So between the two, we know exactly what to give. Moyer Hapsulis Kazeh. So from there we learn out 15, from here we learn out Shkolim. So Mikan, from here, Samchu Chachamim l'Ksuvas Isha min HaTorah. So the Chachamim based the Ksuv of a woman on HaTorah, and this opinion holds HaTorah. Very odd expression, Samchu Chachamim min HaTorah, because usually we say Sam Chachamim means it's not HaTorah, it's only the rabbis. So some Rishonim want to say there's a third opinion that the Ksuv is HaTorah, but the amount, how much to give, that is the Rabbanon. It's like Cholamayid, they compare it to, where the Torah says Cholamayid also you have to treat like Yom Tov, but what work you're permitted to do and what you can't, we leave it up to the Chachamim to make that determination. Now, Shimon Gamliel says, he says clearly, Rabbanon. We have a contradiction here, Shimon Gamliel. So you're right, swap the names around. And this price here, swap it around. So Shimon Gamliel is the one that says it's Mahatayim. Says the Gemara, how do you know which one to swap around? So why you decide to swap around the second price? Maybe the first one, maybe Shimon Gamliel is one who holds Midrabanan. Says the Gemara, you know why? Because we looked in the third place where Rab Shimon Gamliel holds its Mahatayim. Where do we see that? We know somewhere else that he holds its Mahatayim. It's not. We learned in a Mishnah, and the Mishnah later on says, towards the end of the Masechta, Rab Shimon Gamliel says, Noisin law, if a person got married in Israel, the coins, the currency in each country is very different than the next. So if you, let's say, for example, if you married a woman in Israel, you divorced her in a place called Kaput Kaya, I'm not exactly sure where that is. You have to pay her, since the get was written in Israel, you have to pay her with money, the currency of Israel. And but if what do you call it? You married her in Kaput Kaya and divorced her in Israel. So one opinion says you still give her the currency of Yisrael, and Shimon Gamliel says no. Wherever you wrote the ksuva is like a milva loan from the Torah, so it takes effect straight away. And therefore, it was written Kaput Kaya, then you have to give her the currency of Kaput Kaya, even though currently you're living in Israel. So we see Shimon Gamliel clearly holds that a ksuva is from the Torah. Now Shimon Gamliel says no, Kaput Kaya. Give her the money Kaput Kaya. Now, the Rishonim all want to know, actually the big machlekes, when we say you have to get $200, does that mean there's an absolute amount of 200 dinarim, and then and then you go to each country and you calculate, so what's the equivalent value of that? Or do we take the 200 of each country? Just like about Pidyon Aben. Pidyon Aben, you have 5 shkolim. But there's no fixed amount. Every country you give whatever is called a $50 in that country. That's the 5 shkolim that you do. That's what you use. So over here, the same thing, the 200 dinner, whatever, is this, whatever every country, whatever that is equals to, that their currency of that, or is there an exact amount based on the silver, the content, and therefore in every country you just work out. Because if it's the exact amount, which some Rishonim hold, it's an absolute amount, and you just go to every country and then you just compute that in the local currency. So what's the difference if it's Israeli currency, Kaput Kaya currency, all the same? So Rashi actually adds that Israeli currency is much lighter in weight than Kaput Kaya, so it's easier, I guess, to carry around. or maybe it's much more marketable, easier to use. Everybody will accept Israeli currency, and not everybody will accept kaput kaya. That is the difference. Even though the value is the same, but it's much more accessible and marketable and tradable, and that will be the difference. The others say the difference be literally one place. Kaput kaya is you have to use more money than in Israel because we go each place accordingly. Anyway, so the Gemara. So one answer is. So we swap the names around. Of Shimon Gamliel definitely holds Ksuva is mehatera. Or Ibai is saying, or I can go even further. Kula Rabbi Shimon Gamliel, entire Brais of Shimon Gamliel. You want to know how come Shimon Gamliel says it's been Rabbanon? You misunderstood. The Chsudi Mechsa, a few words are missing. V'hachik tan, this is how you say. We can't Samcha Chachamim, the Chachamim based the Ksuva Shimon Torah. That Ksuva is based on the Torah. But Ksuva's Almana, these are the words that are missing. Ksuva of a widow, ain't a Mediv Torah Sefer. Her Ksuva is only Midrabbanon, not from the Torah. Rabbi Shimon Gamliel says, "Ksuvas almona eina b'divrei Torah el b'divrei sefer." By a widow, that the her ksuv is not from the Torah, but only from the Rabbanan, and that's why that's what Shimon was saying, and therefore there's no contradiction whatsoever. Says the Gemara. There's a person also the common Nachman Amalei. He said to Rav Nachman Pesach Matzasi last night. We had relations, and the first time, and I found that the hymen was missing. And therefore, based on what we learned in Shmuel, that it would be that you now live together, and she loses the ksuba. Amr Rav Nachman said, "Azbu kufri, go ahead and give him lashes with a palm tree, with the thorns of a palm tree." And why is that? This guy's a bacher. So is he an expert already? He knows what a hymen is supposed to feel like. Did he have a bunch of Zionist harlots lying before him, so he practiced beforehand, or therefore he became an expert all of a sudden, he knows what it's meant to be? So therefore, it's the different ways of understanding Pshat Gemara. Is the Pshat Rav Nachman is saying, yes, there's two ways of learning Pshat Gemara. Rav Nachman is saying, we'll believe him, but we're going to give him Malchus because he proved to us that he lived a terrible, promiscuous life, a life of debauchery. Or the Pshat Rav Nachman is saying, we don't believe him. What do you know? What, you had Zionist with you the whole time? You didn't. So what do you know? You're just casting aspersions on a woman, so you're a mighty Shemra. And for that, we're going to give you Malchus. For being mighty Shemra, and spreading false rumors. Says the Gemara, Rav Nachman says that he is believed. So if we learn the Gemara understood Rav Nachman is, one way we said Rav Nachman, we just said is, he's not believed. He's just being a mighty Shemra. So the question is, Rav Nachman said elsewhere that he is believed. The other version is Rav Nachman said, yes, we believe him, but give him lashes because the only way he could have known is because he misbehaved. So the Gemara's question is, but Rav Nachman said you believe, and nowhere does he say about lashes. Says the Gemara, no. Mahem is believed, umas bin lekufra. So the first answer Gemara is yes, he's 100% believed, but we're going to give him Malchus for his life, the kind of life that he led, immoral life that he led. However, Rabbi Chayi says no. Mishahi answers, no. A bacher will give him lashes because definitely does not know what he's talking about. He's being a mighty Shemra. He should reconsider what he's saying because he has no basis for it. And Kam ben Nossi, the other occasion, Nachman said, yes, we believe him, and there's no lashes. So much he was married before, so he knows. So Gamliel wanted to say, Shema hi tisa. Rabbi Gamliel wanted to say that Shema hi tisa. In other words, there's two ways of Pshat Gemara. Are we talking about the case of an average woman who has a sveka? So we're saying, why are you coming with this story? You don't even know. Or we're talking about those two cases where now they're opposite each other, the wife of a kohen. So Gamliel is trying to say to him, okay, you're saying that Pesach Surah shall be opposite to you. I want you to reconsider what you're saying. You're really 100% certain that you found the Pesach Surah. Maybe you didn't realize that you're able to circumnavigate the Pesach, the hymen, and you're able to have relations without breaking the hymen. So I want you to think about it, because if that's a possibility, then she's no longer usher to you, and you can live with her. So he just was raising this question so this guy should reconsider or think through what he was saying. And he says, I'll give you an example. It's compared to the other person, the person's going at night, pitch black, and he found a door. So the door was open slightly. So if he goes at an angle, he can walk right through, slip through the door. Doesn't even have to break and the door was like sort of slightly ajar, but there was something behind the door holding it back. So if he sees the angle's pitch black, but if he's able to somehow or another worm his way through it, he can leave the door the way it is intact and just work his way through that area there. If he goes straight head on, then Matzanol, he'll have to push through the door. So maybe you think that you went head on. Maybe you went on an angle somewhere, so therefore you didn't have to tear through the hymen. Another version, maybe you deliberately went head on. You broke right through the door, the ubra and the bolt, and therefore, you didn't even realize it because it happened so quickly. In one jolt, it wasn't. You thought maybe you have to, it takes a little bit of time. You gave it one strong, push, and the hymen tore immediately. So therefore, you didn't even realize it. I'll give you an example. He said, the other person from Halabisha going at night. It's dark. The door is a blockage there, but if he gives one push force, the door is wide open. If it doesn't do deliberately, so it's slow, then he'll find it closed. And maybe I want you to reconsider. If you maintain your story, then she's also to you. But if you don't, she's mutter. Who the person also the Kamei Rav Gamliel, but Rebbe, but Alti, I had relations with dam. I didn't find any dam, any blood. What did she say in this case? Rebbe psula hayisi. She said, she said, I was a psula. And there's nothing wrong. He's making a mistake. Now they used to have, we learned before they had the shamoshim, which were like sheets. They used to use it on a white sheet to see whether there was blood drops or not. And obviously the sheet did not have any blood drops. So therefore he's claiming that I didn't find any blood, but she's saying I was a psula. And, I don't know. I can't explain it, but that's how it is. Amalem, Rebbe, besides being a Talmud Chacham, was also very cluey. He said to them, bring me that handkerchief. So they brought him the handkerchief. He soaked in the water, and then he washed it with some detergents. No, the Shichva Zera was covering over the blood. When he removed all those stains, suddenly the blood appeared. So he saw there were drops of blood. He said, go and enjoy your transaction, in other words, your wife. She's totally permitted to you. Huna, the son of Rava from Prazaki, said to Ravashi, what a brilliant idea. Every time we have a situation where there's this dispute, why don't we take the sheet in the bubble and do the same thing? And and launder it and wash it and then see that any stains of blood. Amalei, he said to him, it won't work in bubble. Why won't it work in bubble? Because giyut shalanu kikibu shalahem. Our giyut is like their laundering. Some say Girashi says, and other Rishonim say giyut means pressing. We have in Hilchos Tisha B'Av, and some say giyut means using certain kind of detergents. Bottom line is that, as Rashi says, their water is much better than ours, or their detergent that they use is much better than ours. It doesn't destroy the product, and therefore they're able to lift the stains and yet leave the blood there. Our thing here, he said, we use a Rashi, we use a press, a stone. When we use a stone, we're going to rub out, even if there was blood there, we're going to rub the blood out with it. So we're never going to discern whether there was blood there or not. We can't do this test. We should do geyut. The geyut is going to remove either the very strong detergent that we're going to use, because our water isn't good enough, or the pressing it will remove the blood stains as well. So we won't be able to know anything at all. Who doesn't come? But Rebbe, Rebbe's son, this guy claimed that there was no dam, no psulim. And she said, I am still a psulim. Not only is she saying that they're disputing, she's saying that I'm still a psulim. In other words, we didn't have a proper relation. He said, okay, we'll do a test. We had this Gemara also in Yavamas. Bring me two maids. Achas psula, achas bula. I want to have two maids here. I want to have one maid who was still psula. So in other words, her hymen is still intact. And va'achas bula, and one who already had relations. They brought him. He opened up 2 barrels of wine and he sat them both on top of the barrels of wine. And then he went over and he told each one to blow out of their mouth, and he smelled their breath. Bu'ula, the one that there was a bu'ula, had no hymen there whatsoever. Over time, suddenly the smell of wine came through her mouth. Besula, but the psula, of course, you had this obstruction. The hymen ain't reichenoidev. It didn't come through her mouth. Then Avzu Haishiva, then he took this girl who claimed that she's still a psula, he placed her on the barrel, and the reich did not come out, that she was telling the truth, that was still a psula. Amalai said to the chassan, you can go ahead and live together. Says the Gemara, why did you go through this whole ordeal to have 2 shvachas and so on? The nivdig mi ikara begavah. Why didn't you just let Chila test her? So we answered, Gemara have a shmila. First, he heard theory that this is how it works. But Maisel have a chazi. He never saw it in play, in action. The Savar, and he thought, maybe I'm not sure I'm doing it right. Why would I humiliate a Jewish girl to sit here on top of the barrel of wine? And I'm humiliated her and I don't even know what I'm doing. It's not nice. So I had the two shvachas, and then I was able to use it on her, that test. Somebody came to Rebbe, he said, Rebbe, I had relations with him, but I didn't find any blood. And she said, Rebbe, durkati ani. I come from a mishpacha called Durkati. We'll soon see why it's called Durkati. They have no blood. They don't menstruate, and they don't have a dam sulim either. Very little blood. Gamliel checked out the family, because this obviously is in the genes. Found it's true that they don't have blood. Amala, he said to this young man, Lech go ahead, and there's nothing wrong with the fact you didn't see any blood, because that's the kind of family she comes from. Go ahead and live with your wife together. Ashrecha, in fact, praiseworthy, you should praise your stars, that you were zoichet to marry someone from that family. So, first of all, my Durkati, what kind of family name is Durkati? So we answered Dur Ketua, that was cut off from his cut off. They're different than everybody else, that they don't have a blood of a nido or blood sulam. Rab Chanina said, when he said to them, how lucky you are, he was actually being nice to them. Because Tanchumim shall have in fact, this is console, it's empty words. Why? Because in fact, it's better to have blood. He said, just like yeast is fantastic for dough. Sourdough is good for dough. The more blood a woman has, the better it is. The healthier children, and so on. The Tanam Shulamer once said, any woman that has lots of blood, she'll have lots of children, or the children will be very healthy. So in fact, he was consoling him, but he was just being nice. Says Rabbi said, no, it's a positive thing. So we say, Rabbi Rabba said, what Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel was saying was that Rabbi Gamliel Zaken was saying was words which are true. He said it's a good thing. It's a bad thing, because the fact is that not having children or very difficult. We understand the one who said that it's bad because what Chanina is saying it's not very good for the children. For the future, the one who says that was a good thing, what's a good? When it answers he'll never have a chash that maybe his wife is a nida, doesn't have to worry about calculating the calendars, the dates, and all that, because she never bleeds. Who doesn't come at Rebbe? Someone came to Rebbe. The Rebbe, I had relations, I couldn't find any blood. You see, well, the girl in the defense said, yes, I'm still a psula, but you should know the Shnei Batzoides have it. It was during a famine, and they were very, scrawny, and they had no flesh inside them. Rebbe saw that their faces were, dark. They haven't eaten for a long time. Tziva Lane, he instructed them. He brought them to his house. He bathed them. The hechilum, he fed them. The hishkum, gave them to drink. The hechnisum lecheder, he invited them to sleep by him. And eventually, once they got healthy again, baalum watzadam, they had relations, and sure enough, she started to bleed. Rebbe said, Lech zachei b'mikchecha, go ahead and live with your wife. Kari Rebbe Aleim. Rebbe said, I understand now this pasuk where it says that there are times of famine, tzafad oidam al atzmam, that their skin and their skin got stuck on the bones, cleaved to the bones. Yavish haikate, was dry like a piece of wood. There was no blood flowing through them. Okay, back to the Mishnah. Psula, when it comes to a psula, ksuvos masayim. A psula, her ksuva is $200. Even if she's a begeres, her ksuva is $200. But the almana, a widow, is mana, 100. Psula, almana, ugrusha, to these four cases, either a psula or a widow. Now, what kind of widow? We just said a widow gets $100. No, a widow who just merely got engaged, and then her fiance passed away. They never consummated their relationship. Grusha, divorcee, the same thing. Again, they were only engaged. Or a chalutza, they were engaged, he died, and now she has to marry the brother-in-law. Mina Edesin, if it's from the engagement, ksuvasin masayim. The ksuva is still $200 because we know definitely nothing happened. The Yeshman Tainim Psula, the husband can argue when he got married. I thought you're still a Psula. How come I didn't see any blood? It's all valid because if they were only engaged, there are no relationships, except in Yehuda, which we learned that Yehuda is different, but everywhere else, there were no relationships. And the Chiddush of Chalutza, if you remember, we learned that as soon as the husband dies, the brother-in-law is as if the brother-in-law already sort of was married. The Zika, it's much more than just an ordinary case of a woman who's engaged to a man. This is like they're married already, in a way. So we would have thought that maybe she only is entitled to $100 psula. And we say, no, she's merely engaged. Says he, what am I almana? What's the source, the origin of the word almana? Amar Rav Chana Baktar, Rav Chana from the city of Baghdad said, almana. You know what the word almana is? The source of the word almana? Al Shem mana. If you look at the word almana, mana is $100. And that's where the name almana. In fact, the Rishonim say almana is in the word ile. Ile means mute. She has no one to talk to anymore. She was married before, and now that she has a husband and she feels terrible, she's like it's quiet. Became a very silent person. So the source of the word almana they say is ile, which was mute. But the Mishnah, the Gemara wants to know. So what does the nun hey, the extra nun hey, the end of the word come from? Just say ilim. Where's almana? And we answer the last nun hey is if you take the mem nun hey is mana 100. Says the Gemara. Okay. So almana, I mean, but almana from the erison we just said is entitled to a full 200. So why is she called a widow? The word almana you say is based on the word mana 100, but a widow from an engagement is entitled to 200. So why is she also referred to as almana? So you're right. The most women who are widows after getting married. So therefore, since they're called almana, we'll call any widow an almana. Almana the ksiba raisa. Okay, but the Torah uses the word almana. Almana is $100. You know that many years later, and other countries it's not Israeli money. So why would the Torah call almana? Says the Gemara, the asidin rabbanon the mesakale mana. It's amazing. The Torah used the word almana because many years later from now there will be they're entitled to a ksuv of a mana, and therefore we call them almana. This sounds like it's Mahatorah Ksuvah, because it's Ksuvah Rabbanan. You know, why would the Torah, unless, I mean, the Rabbanan itself would say, see, the Torah already had clues, because there's a big argument, the Rambam and the Ritva, when we say a smachta, what does that really mean? Does it mean merely that the Chachamim made a law, and they found a pasuk in the Torah so that we should remember it, so they found an anchor in the Torah. The Torah really has nothing to do with that law. They just call it a smachta, it's leaning on that so we can remember. But the Ritva says chas v'sholom. That's the Rambam. The Ritva says chas v'sholom. It's Rosh Hashanah. In the end, he says that when we say a smachta, it means the Torah definitely meant that din, but the Torah did not want it to be in the sphere of the Torah. It should be in the realm of the Rabbanon. So that's what a smachta is. So here also it sounds like that. He said that the Torah, that Ksuvah is the Rabbanon, according to Chacham, right? Ksuvah Rabbanon, and yet the Torah is entertaining the idea that a Ksuvah, the Rabbanon, and we'll get to in the future a mana, and let's call a mana right now. It's pretty amazing. Says the Gemara, the Torah writes today about the future. Yes, I'll prove it to you. It says in the Pasuk, in Bereshis, the Shem Hanor Ashlishi around Gan Eden, right in the beginning of time, the third river, Chidekel, is called Chidekel. And who, Ahoyle Kitmas Asher, that goes toward the east of Asher. And Torah B'Yeshev says, which Asher are we talking about? Asher is Slika. It's a place called Slika. It's not the famous Assyria, it's Slika. And Umi Havoi, did it exist at that time? The way Rashi learns, we're talking about the beginning of creation. Did Slika exist in the beginning of the creation? And Tesha already asked, and if it would be called Asher is any better? And Tesha says, which is hard to understand, that maybe Asher already existed right in the beginning of time, not as a big city, but as an area called Asher. Maybe the areas were given names even though nobody lived there. And the Torah decided to call it Asher or Assyria. But Tosha disagrees with Rashi. He holds that Moshe Rabbeinu wrote the Torah in his time. So in the times of Moshe Rabbeinu, Asher already existed, and therefore he used names that the people at that time knew could refer to it. But this city called Salika wasn't around in the times of Moshe Rabbeinu. So yet, why would we say Asher, which refers to Salika? El Dasida. One day there will be a city called Slika. The Torah has other words where it's written based on the future. Talking about Chana from Baghdad, so we use a few other things that he said. Chana Baghdad said, Matar, that rain is a good thing. Mashke, what it does is it irrigates the fields, it saturates the fields, and fertilizes the fields. Uma'adin, and it gives health to the fruits of the crop of the fields, and mamshich, and it continues to grow. And that's what rain does. He found the pasuk to support that. It says Tlomer, that it's the ridges there of the fields is rave, is saturated. Nachas gedudel, its furrows are are calm, and birvivim, the soft rain, the slow rain, timaynena, will soften it up, which is like fertilizer, and simcha tevarech, and its growth will be blessed, which is what we said. Ma'adin and mamshich. Amar Abelazar said mizbeach, that the mizbeach you bring karbonis, and the way Rashi learns the word mizbeach itself, it actually incorporates a few of the benefits of bringing karbonis, and that is maziach. First of all, it gets rid of all the sins, karmachatas and so on. Mazin, that the chus of the karbonis that we bring, which karbonis themselves come from food. It gives a bracha to all the rest of the food in the world. Mechabib, it endears us in the eyes of Hashem, and mechaper, it atones for our sins. The Gemara asks, maziach and mechaper, and all of these words are sort of included in the word mizbeach. It all has a few letters of the word mizbeach. So the Gemara, mechaper, heine maziach is not the same thing. Somebody says no. Maziach is gzeidus, and mechaper is avainis. Maziach means all the punishments are gone, but that means we weren't forgiven, and mechaper means actually forgiven as well. Rav Chana from Baghdad said, Tamri, when it comes to dates, eating dates, we had a few times in Gemara, there's virtues in eating dates and there's the problems in eating dates. It was very cheap then, and somebody went to Bubble and he said, oh, I'm surprised they don't learn more than they learn, because they have dates plentiful, and it's a food, it's cheap food, they can eat a little bit of dates and learn as much as they want. And after having a handful of dates and he sat in the toilet all day, he said, I'm not sure how they even learn what they learned. Eating of dates. So the Gemara says, Tamri dates, Meshchanan, the dates warm you up, Masbin, it actually fills you, but Meshalshlon, it loses your bowels, and Ma'ashan makes you strong, and V'loy Mefankon, and it doesn't make you delicate at all, and doesn't cause you any heart issues. Amarav says, somebody eats dates, Al Yoida, don't go ahead and paskin anything at all. Why? Because it's distracting. Just like if somebody's inebriated, it's distracting. Over here also, it's distracting. And you can't focus. You cannot concentrate. Rachel asks a question about dates. It says, Tamarim, dates, shachris, if you ate dates in the morning, va'arvis, you ate it at night, yafas, it's good for you. Because in other words, after eating is good for you. So if you ate after breakfast dates, and or if you ate it after dinner at night, fantastic. Ben mincha, in the late afternoon, which means before dinner, so you haven't eaten dinner yet, it's raw is bad for you. And Rashi says after siesta, you had, with the way Rashi learned, they used to have 3 meals a day then also, like we have today, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So after they had lunch, they would have a siesta, like you have in Europe, and then you wake up and you go ahead and eat dates. It's very bad for you. But after lunch, you go ahead, ein kamoisim, that's the best time. There's nothing like it. It's even better than eating after dinner. Why? Because if you have to go to the bathroom, it's daytime and the sunlight, if the sun is bright, and it's very easy to go to the bathroom at night. It's much more difficult, and it's a tircha. Eating dates takes away 3 issues. Deals with 3 issues. Machshavara, if you have bad thoughts, if you're worried, because in a way you're a little bit intoxicated, so your worrying stops. If you have trouble with your stomach or intestines, it cures that. And if you have hemorrhoids, it cures that as well. Says the Gemara. So we see dates are the good thing. So how come Rav says that you shouldn't paskin if you ate dates? Says the Gemara, Mi amrinan delay ma'ala. Did I say that dates are no good for you? Alui ma'ala is very good, but the problem is, the moment tirda, you are not focused, you are distracted. And then meat to have a chamr is like wine. Wine is a good thing, and yet don't matter. You drank the revius of wine. Don't paskin because you cannot focus. Same thing with dates. Or I can tell you that dates sometimes is good for you, sometimes it's bad for you. Before you ate bread, it's bad for you. But the boss is after you ate bread, it's good for you. Abai said, my mother told me, his foster mother, I want to raise him. If you eat dates, if you eat dates before breakfast or before you eat a meal, is like an axe to a palm tree. You're cutting it down, it cuts right through you. After you ate your meal, is it's like a bolt on a door, which is perfectly suitable. Talking about dasha, the Gemara says some of the words Where do they come from? The origin of some of the words. Dasha, which means a door. Amar Rabba. Why does Dasha in Aramaic mean a door? And the Rabba says derech sham. That Dasha is derech sham. This is the way to enter the house. So what the Gemara is really saying here is that Aramaic and Lashon Kodesh are actually sort of fused together. Or the Aramaic is based on Lashon Kodesh, because the word Dasha is an Aramaic word. You say derech sham, and this is the Gemara says in Shabbos Daf we learned that you should not daven in the language of Aramis on your own, because Malachim don't understand Aramaic, which the Mefarshim, their Taisus, they're on the spot, and others don't understand. Malachim can read your mind. What do you mean they don't understand that? They understand every language except Aramaic. And in fact, Aramaic is the closest to Hebrew, a lot closer than English, or all the Romantic languages, or the Chinese, whatever. Why can't they understand Aramaic? So the Ravid in Tamim Daim writes a fascinating thing. The Ravid writes in his Chuvas that what happened was that people, went to exile during the 70 years in Babel, and they took on, as we know, most of them didn't want to go back to Israel because they had a very good life. Culturally, they joined the Babylonians, and financially, and they were very settled in Babel. They didn't want to leave. So what was happening in Babel was that they stopped talking Lashon Kodesh. They started talking the local vernacular, and all the kids knew how to speak Babylonian, Aramaic. They did not know how to speak Hebrew, and because it was close enough to Hebrew, I guess people didn't feel guilty because it's close enough, but it wasn't. So the kids did not know how to learn Torah, did not know how to daven, whatever they had to daven, and so on. And the Chacham got really scared because another generation will be totally forgotten. And so what they did was they came out with this harsh statement: you should know that your davening is worthless without, if it's not in Lashon Kodesh. Any other language is all right, but not in Aramaic, because they were so worried about Aramaic. The Aramaic is very close; it's close enough to Lashon Kodesh that people don't feel guilty speaking it in those days, and yet it's not Lashon Kodesh, and therefore there's a problem. But here you see right here the resemblance between Lashon Kodesh and Aramaic. So Dasha is derech sham. Darga, again another Aramaic word. Amarava derech gag. This is the ladder. That's how they went up to the roof. Puria, which is an Aramaic word for a bed. Amarapapa sheparim v'ravin 11. A bed. That's where you're fruitful and you procreate. Again, all these Aramaic words are based on Hebrew words. V'ravin 11. Af ononayman. In fact, we also add to that. This wasn't said by Rava, but we add also the islandess. A woman who cannot bear children, she's called an islandess. Islandess is duchronis de la yoga. We're going to say the word islandess is, why is she called an islandess? Because duchronis is a male ram who cannot obviously bear any children. And the same thing here, she's called an islandess. Okay, we'll stop here.